should help businesses move faster, operate smarter, and reduce complexity. At Advanced 2000, that belief has guided everything we do for more than 30 years. We are a global managed IT, cybersecurity, and private cloud provider dedicated to your productivity. We work hard to keep your teams productive and your data private. We don't just support your tech in the cloud, we support it where it matters most, in your offices. Our end users rate us 4.7 out of 5 stars, with more than 60,000 reviews each year. We power mission-critical applications, servers, and desktops with predictable performance and lower cost. Security isn't an add-on. It's built into everything we design, deploy, and manage. Our approach is simple and proven. We assess, modernize, and support your business. Rely on Advanced 2000 to modernize your IT and help grow your business today.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Katie Shaner, and on behalf of the team here at Advanced 2000, I'd like to thank you for joining us for our monthly webinar series. Today, we'll discuss the current cyber threat landscape and how organizations can better protect their IT environments. Before we begin and get started, just a few quick housekeeping items. The session is being recorded and will be sent out to everyone post-event. We will have a few minutes at the end for Q&A after the conclusion of the discussion. So feel free to drop any of your questions in the chat at any time, and we will get to them at the end. Today's Advanced 2000 moderator kicking off our discussion is Joe Fargnoli. Joe, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Katie, and welcome everyone to our monthly webinar. Here at Advanced 2000, we set up this webinar to educate, enlighten, and inspire the community to really use information technology to achieve our greatest ends. We've got a great lineup of speakers today and a really important topic, which is, as Katie mentioned, the new cybersecurity battlefield. Our goal today is really to help us to appreciate what this battlefield is comprised of, what risks are small businesses really facing, and how serious do we need to take the threat. So Advanced 2000 is a leading managed security services and cloud provider. Cybersecurity is no longer just an IT function. It is a business survival issue. Every day, U.S. organizations face escalating and increasingly sophisticated threats. In 2025 alone, the United States recorded a record 3,322 data breaches, the highest ever, with the average breach costing $10.22 million per incident, the highest in the world. And these attacks are not random. They are driven by financial extortion and ransomware, intellectual property theft, corporate espionage, infrastructure disruption, financial system targeting, and broader geopolitical objectives. The digital environment has become contested territory, and businesses of every size are now part of that landscape. Today, we've assembled an expert panel to help us unpack what's really happening, separating hype from reality, and most importantly, delivering practical strategies that CEOs and CIOs can implement to reduce risk and strengthen resilience. I'm going to now introduce our expert panel. Let's get started. First, I want to introduce Miriam Khalid. She is the Director of Offensive Cybersecurity at Barracuda, where she and her team are responsible for handling all offensive operations. This includes building best-in-class use case detections through machine learning and artificial intelligence, conducting static queries to detect anomalous or suspicious behavior, researching and implementing new platforms, workflow automation, and providing best-in-class experience for Barracuda partners and their customers. And Advanced 2000 is gratefully a Barracuda partner. To her role at Barracuda, Miriam brings extensive experience in analyzing data, identifying threats, incident response, research and development, platform migrations, and more. She's a skilled researcher and has authored many white papers. She's also a mentor to many individuals on her team and is focused on her team's and partners' success. During her career, Miriam has spoken at cybersecurity conferences such as Elasticon, RSA, and AWS conference, and presented many webinars showcasing the latest cybersecurity threats. Miriam earned her degree in computer science from SUNY Old Westbury and has many years of experience leading and handling security operations. Welcome, Miriam. Thank you for joining us. I'd also like to introduce Dean Lane. Dean serves as the Executive Vice President of Cyber Intelligence and Chief Information Officer for the Institute of World Politics, IWP, of which I am a student as well. In this capacity, he has many responsibilities, one of which is to manage the Army and Navy Club's Cyber Intelligence Club. Prior to joining IWP, Dean was the Executive Vice President for Svitla Systems, Inc. Before locating to the East Coast, Dean was in the Silicon Valley area for 20 plus years. Dean served as the CIO for such companies such as Allied Signal, Plantronics, and Morton Thiokol. He was a cyber consultant for Ernst Young, Gartner, AT&T, and his own consultancy in Silicon Valley. Dean also had profit and loss responsibility while at Allied Signal for the F-18 aircraft and the Apache helicopter. Once at corporate, Dean was responsible for 26 major divisions and 104 facilities. He's written 3 books and consulted with Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Dean is also a highly decorated naval officer and served as the SEAL team officer for the Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet. Thank you for your service, Dean. Dean obtained his undergraduate degree from the University of California, UCLA, and his MBA from National University. Welcome, Dean. I'd also like to introduce Brian Mowat. Brian is a technology entrepreneur with more than 35 years of experience in the IT and cloud computing industry. He is the founder and CEO of Advanced 2000 and several other ventures. Throughout his career, Brian has served as an outsourced CIO for numerous organizations, guiding executive teams and aligning technology strategy with business outcomes. He has also served as a board member for private equity firms, contributing strategic insight on growth, operations, and risk management. Brian holds degrees in electrical and mechanical engineering, combining technical depth with practical business acumen. An entrepreneur from the very beginning, he self-funded and built his first company directly out of college, growing it from the ground up into a nationally recognized technology organization. Brian leads his business on the principles of trust, transparency, accountability, and teamwork. Building organizations that prioritize long-term relationships, operational excellence, and measurable client success. Brian, thank you for joining us. And Brian, thank you for hosting this webinar for us.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I wanted to just go around the horn maybe for a quick moment and give Miriam, Dean, and Brian a quick chance to give their own little self-introduction, and then I want to start jumping into some questions. So Miriam, you want to just kick us off by giving a little more color on your background or your interest in this area before we jump into questions?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joseph. So just to get a little bit of background, currently I'm managing the detection engineering and incident response team. So basically front in line for any incidents that happen, such as ransomware attacks or any business email compromises. So I'm excited to give you guys all the insights from my experience.
Thank you, Miriam. Dean?
Thank you. So first, the Institute of World Politics may sound like a think tank, but it's actually a graduate school. And that's important in the introduction because I am in the typical CIO position, so I'm responsible for all technology, for the security and everything that goes with it. But another part of my responsibility is for developing AI curriculum. So I'm putting together a master's degree in artificial intelligence. We're in the process of defining that, the number of courses, what those courses are, what the prerequisites are. And so by the time we're all done, we will be able to submit to our accrediting body and request to be authorized to have a degree in artificial intelligence. That's what I'm doing.
Awesome. We look forward to that, Dean. Thank you. Brian.
I'm Brian Moad. I've been, like Joe said, an entrepreneur for many, many, many years. My passion is technology and business, and I love helping. I really love helping small companies, grow and all that kind of stuff. It brings me a lot of pleasure. So this topic here on cybersecurity is exciting for me because I really want to give insight to a lot of these small companies that are out there because I truly believe they are exposed. So I'm excited to hear your questions, Joe, and answer them for our audience. And I want to also thank Dean and Miriam for being here with us and helping us with this.
Thank you, Brian. All right, guys, so buckle up. Let's get going here. I've got 5 areas of questions. We're going to look at the threat landscape, what's actually happening. Then we're going to go to the reality for business. Then we're going to look at the nation state and strategic risk. Then what CEOs and CIOs should do. And lastly, a set of short questions and answers. Under the first topic, the threat landscape, let's talk about what's actually happening out there. So, Dean, I'm going to ask you the first question here. Do you think that American businesses are being specifically targeted for attack, or are they more like collateral damage? Are we looking at more, folks just want to hurt the U.S., or are they targeting specific companies?
I think you have a little bit of both. Fraud is the biggest risk right now. And from a company standpoint, you're talking ransomware, halting operations, and those kinds of things. So in that sense, yes, they're being targeted. But even individuals are being targeted with identity theft and phishing campaigns. So I think it's all about the money. It used to be that hackers would just send something out like the "I love you" virus from 100 years ago that shut down all kinds of things, and they did that almost to gain a reputation or just to see what they could do. But in today's environment, it's more geared towards gaining information or money.
Can I
Great.
add
Thank you, Dean.
to that?
Sure, Miriam.
So I think I definitely agree with Dean. It's all targeted towards money, but I think they do target SMBs a little more because they are the weaker link in terms of organizations. They don't have the proper resources. They have weaker defenses. So it's usually the doorway into a bigger environment for larger organizations.
Got it. Hey, Brian, an area where I know you focus, what would you say, what percentage of attacks today are financially motivated versus state aligned?
Well, I don't know if anybody can ever say, but for all the reports that I read, I would say today 80%, kind of like Dean said, 80% are financially motivated, and there are intelligence reports, and I've spoken to some people, anywhere from 20 to 36%. I would say they're state aligned. And again, I'm not in the CIA to tell you exactly, but there's varying percentages. But I think, if you're asking me my opinion, obviously, I think financially driven, but also intellectually driven by stealing intellectual property, which kind of falls in line with these. By stealing someone's hard work and intellectual property, you really don't have to do the research yourself because you're stealing it, and that has a dollar value. The other thing that Miriam brushed on is smaller businesses, which leads me, which I know Dean I'm sure agrees with me here, which leads me to the supply chain disruption. If you look at today, our nation, a lot of people don't know this. 99.9% of U.S. companies companies are made up of small and medium-sized businesses, which is businesses less than 500 people, and they are intertwined with the large businesses that are, the 0.1%. And believe it or not, those 99.99% of businesses contribute to somewhere around almost maybe a little less what I read of 50% of the U.S. GDP, but make no mistake, they are the backbone of our country. So because they do intertwine, and Dean can probably talk even more about this here shortly, they intertwine with the larger companies. They're subcontractors for larger companies, they're vendors. So there's a huge connection, and without those small guys, the bigger companies will be in trouble. So, and that other 50% would be. And so going back to that, a lot of these smaller companies, I call that the supply chain of our economy, are pretty much I don't protected, kind of like Miriam said, as well as they should. So now, hence, the larger companies are not protected because a lot of that intellectual property sometimes flows upward. And I'm going to let the Dean and Miriam, Dean probably can say a lot about this, I'm sure. Being his
well, let me take us in a certain direction here. So, Miriam, you're the Director of Offensive Cybersecurity at Barracuda. You guys are working across American industry and global industry. You're seeing front and center what's going on. How have you seen attacks change in the last 3 years? Per Brian's point, has the strategy changed going from larger companies to smaller companies? How have attacks changed over the last 3 years?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really important question. There's a lot to unpack there, but essentially attacks are becoming faster and more automated with the use of AI. But what I do want to emphasize is the core of all the attacks remain the same from incident response that I was doing 5 years ago to now. Threat actors are still going after the low-hanging fruit, right? They're still going after people that do not have MFA configured. They're still going after people that don't have a patch policy in place. And they're also using trusted tools. So using tools that are already installed in your system, using living off the land techniques and critical vulnerabilities. They are using similar techniques, but now it's just faster. So before it would take maybe a day or two to kind of get all the information and design an attack towards an organization. Now they can do it in seconds and in minutes because of all the AI and automation. So tactics and techniques are staying the same, in my opinion, but just the speed of the way
means
they're
are changing.
hacking, it's really catastrophic if you think about it. Now they can target 100 organizations in an hour rather than one organization.
Yeah, got it. Thank you, Miriam. Brian, what would you say to the CEO, or what do most CEOs still misunderstand about the reality of cybersecurity risk?
Sure. I think a lot of CEOs treat cybersecurity as a technology purchase, like you're just going to buy something, a firewall or something. They need to treat it more as a risk management program. They need to also realize, and I can talk because I've been in the industry for a long, long time, and I've seen a lot of huge mistakes that cause businesses to go completely out of business. They need to assume that this is a threat for their entire business, not some type of a security purchase. The problem is not solved with a tool. There's also a human factor associated. Today in cybersecurity, as you know, you've got people working in your company. They click on the email, they open things up. So there's training of the people and all that stuff. A lot of CEOs also they don't give that a lot of visibility. So, which is a tool we created, hopefully, for CEOs to use. I'm not trying to push our tools, which is our cybersecurity scorecard, allowing CEOs to have that visibility of their risk posture. They assume that they also assume that they can take care of breaches very quickly. They don't do the exercise. So pretend you have a breach. How quickly can you recover? Can you truly recover? Can you simulate that you can recover from a breach? A lot of companies don't do that.
Got it. Miriam, so the next topic area is the reality for business. Put on your black hat. If you were attacking a 100-person firm, let's say it was a law firm or an AEC firm or an accounting or medical, how would you do it?
So I think I've incorporated this in a lot of my answers, but I would target the low-hanging fruit, right? So I would target a phishing email, right? Or I would look for leaked credentials on the web. I would try to exploit an open port on a firewall. I would try to exploit a critical vulnerability on any of their public-facing assets that haven't been patched. And then once I'm within their network, I would look for a rogue device, a device that does not have any security monitoring in place so I can go under the radar for as long as possible and try to extract as much information as possible. And then from if I want to detonate a ransomware attack or if I just want to sit in their environment and collect information, it really depends. But using legitimate tools, legitimate admin tools, living off the land techniques is really what threat actors are using nowadays. So I would determine, is my goal to encrypt the system or is it just to extortion to like, get money out of them, or do I really want to sell the data on the dark web? So there's a lot of different ways threat actors move around the environment. But from what I've seen in my experience, it's usually targeting open ports, using living off the land techniques, and staying in their environment as dormant as possible for as long as they want.
Well, remind me to stay on Miriam's good side. Hey, Brian, you see a lot of real scenarios in the SMB environment. What do you think are the top 3 gaps that you consistently see?
It baffles me when customers still don't have MFA. That's one of them. So if you don't have MFA, make sure you go get it. Make sure you have multi-factor authentication and all that. That's one of them. No real detection in response, like an MDR product. No proven backup and restores. A lot of companies, and we've seen it many times where they don't have immutable backups. Sometimes you might get hacked. It could be a zero-day vulnerability that goes around everything, but do you have immutable offline backups that you can recover from? Those are the things. I don't know if Dean or Miriam want to add to this. I welcome their input.
Yeah, the three things that I see are, identification, and that could be the what's the right way to say it? Having secure passwords, having not having password as your password. Also, third-party exposure, which Brian mentioned before. Where a vendor to a larger company doesn't have all of the security things in place that they should have. And then also, I think AI is a multiplier for these two. So that's another way, if you're not taking that into account, that's a gap. I'd also like to say that the small, going back to what Miriam said, the small and medium businesses are typically targeted by hacktivists, people, not the state-aligned ones. The state-aligned people, as Brian mentioned, are about 1/3 of all the attacks. And those people may not even be looking for money. They may be looking for information that they can sell. So the state-aligned actors are going after the larger companies. And it is the hacktivists that are actually hitting the small, medium size businesses, and they're usually looking for some kind of financial gain.
But hey, Dean, in your experience, how long do attackers typically dwell inside networks before detection?
So the dwell time, even a couple of years ago, was, believe it or not, was 50 to 60 days. So dwell time is defined as from the time they get on your network until the time that they are discovered. Now, they can stay there for a long time without being discovered if they're not active, if they're just kind of hiding. But today, the research shows that the dwell time on average is 11 days.
Got it.
Joseph,
Hey, so
do you
Brian,
mind if I
yeah, please, Miriam, please.
So this is actually one of the things that we put a lot of research on. And going back to Dean's point, it really depends on what threat actor there is. So from the research that we did, we saw dwell time from anywhere to 3 days to 2 weeks, to even 2 months, right? So depending on the threat actor, how skilled they are, how advanced they are, what their motive is, they can go from breach to encryption within 3 hours, or they could stay dormant for however long, and not do any encryption or any extortion for 2 months. So it really depends on who you're dealing with, or if they're nation state actors, if they're hacktivists, what their skill set is. So you really have to be, prepared for anything here.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you,
to Miriam's point, the scary thing is they can go within 3 hours, they're done, okay?
Exactly.
But the real thing to do is to detect them, right? They might sit on your network, as she said, for as much as 3 months. And if you can detect them while they haven't been active, then you can do something about it.
Got it. Brian, let's talk again about the reality for business. Is cyber insurance making companies safer?
Cyber insurance itself, indirectly. So the cyber insurance companies, obviously, they don't want to insure you if you're not going to take measures to protect. Why would they insure you? You'd be losing money day in and day out. I wouldn't insure you if I was a cyber company. So what they want to do, they put together a list of things that they recommend, that they want businesses to do before they insure them, which includes MFAs and a whole bunch, even audits and a whole bunch of stuff. So by following the insurance company's recommendation, you'll be actually protecting yourself. So if you really want to know how to at least protect yourself, definitely look at what some of these large insurance companies require from a cyber for you to do in order for them to insure you, which includes MFA, EDR, backups, login, incident response. Those are some of the things. So yeah, I would say yes, it protects you indirectly by following their recommendations.
Got it. All right, guys. So let's just take a step back. We've looked at the threat landscape, what's actually happening. We just went through the reality for business. Let's switch gears now and look at nation state and strategic risk. So Dean, this is obviously your area of expertise. Are nation state actors targeting mid-market firms in the United States?
I would say if they have some strategic importance, like for national security, typically that's what nation states are looking for. They may be, they may be looking for vulnerabilities in terms of if they were ever to attack us, which small, medium business companies are, I'll say, fulcrums or points that could lead to other, harmful things for our country. They may be targeting them to collect that kind of information. But they usually nation states are not gonna try and get $5,000-$10,000 worth of ransom money from any kind of a company. They're usually more interested in national security and what secrets do these companies have? Because you think of the government as having secrets, but it is the people that develop the weapons, the people that build ships, the people that are mobilizing tanks, that even people who create ammunition. At what rate do they create these bullets or these missiles so that an enemy nation state can say, okay, look, if we go to war with them, they can only produce 3 airplanes a month. Okay, and those airplanes can only fly for so long, and they can start to do calculations on how to wage war just by the information. And I'm talking kinetic war here. There's other kind of war, same kind of thing, where they'll collect the information. What happens if we smash the power grid? Where is the water kept, and how does it move throughout the country? All those kinds of things are what nation states are actually looking for.
Great. Thank you, Dean. Brian, in your view, in your experience, which is pretty broad, how does geopolitical conflict show up in the business environment?
Well, I truly believe we are at war. We're in a cyber war. We've been in a cyber war for quite a long time. This is my personal belief. You can disagree with me. I think enemy states, the people that are trying to compete with us, are constantly putting pressure, whether through small, medium-sized businesses, like to disrupt upward or steal information, just like Dean mentioned. So they might. They also. This is what I believe. Okay, they also would probably collect this kind of information for later use. I call it maybe quiet access, so they could sit there and all that to target whether infrastructure or supporting a supply chain mechanism. I think those things sometimes, and I just reading many books, sometimes don't happen right away. During time of tension, they might be applied, but that's my opinion. Maybe Dean can provide more on this, or Miriam.
Any thoughts, guys?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
We're talking about does geopolitical conflict show up in the business environment? I think about when, for example, when North Korea attacked Sony Pictures because of the film that they made about the North Korean leader. Do you see that happening often? Does geopolitical conflict show up in business environments?
Yeah, that's an example of somebody got mad and so they wanted to strike back, and certainly that can happen. I think depending on the type of firm and how they work with our own government, they could definitely become a target. So even the smallest, let's say, manufacturing company that provides, screws and nuts and bolts for equipment that's made for the government, they're a small, medium business, but they would be vulnerable to nation state attacks. Again, I don't believe a nation state is going to target an SMB to gain $5,000. Those threats come from hacktivists, people that are trying to create ransomware opportunities. But I do believe, as Brian has mentioned, the small, medium business is still vulnerable because these nation states would like to target them because their security obviously is not going to be as great as, say, an IBM or some large company, General Motors, something like that. So they can enter that small, medium business, and then via email or transferring of files, they can write it up. And they can start at the smallest supplier and go up 4 or 5 levels until they get to a General Motors, or they get to some company that is extremely large. And the vulnerability there is, what happens if they actually succeed at doing that? There's physical and digital damage, right? That could occur. Certainly economic damage. A big one would be reputational, right? So, I was hacked and they wrote me up. And also, it could create some confusion and discomfort within the firm that was hacked. So it's a vulnerability, but we have to figure out who's the bigger threat. Is it going to be a nation state trying to write us up, or is it going to be a competitor or somebody who's looking to ransomize us? And I think you just need to prioritize which ones you're gonna fight against first. I'm not saying you should ignore any of them, but where do I put my dollars? And it turns out if you're smart, the dollars you apply may be able to protect you against all 3.
So
Got it.
to add to that, Joseph, in terms of geopolitical conflict and what we've seen within our customers is it really depends on what sector they're in. If they're part of the critical sector, so if their businesses is tied to any sort of defense, any sort of infrastructure, such as airports, hospitals, banks, I would say even if you're an SMB, you're still at risk for these geopolitical attacks that are happening, just because you're tied to the nation's critical infrastructure.
Got it. Got it. So Miriam, let's stick on this topic. So Dean talked about fighting back, right? I've heard the term hacking back. You are the director of offensive cybersecurity. So talk to us. How realistic is it to think about offensive tactics? We always talk about cyber from a defensive standpoint. Give us the reality of offensive cybersecurity.
To keep it simple and short, no, it is very legally risky and operationally very, very dangerous. It's complex, and the retaliation can escalate to consequences that are beyond our control and could go on to a full-fledged cyber crime or a cyber warfare with your threat actor. And what you want to focus on instead, if you do get breached or hacked, is follow your IR process. Make sure you have one in place. Inform your local authorities at the time of the breach, because even if you try to pay the ransom or hack back, there's never ever a guarantee that your data is safe, right? They may come back 2 years later, hey, we want more money because we have this much data of yours. So your priority when you do get attacked or when there is an incident is to let the authorities kind of handle that. Make sure you have cyber insurance. That's why they're there. Make sure you're focusing on business operations, getting your business back, and identifying what actually caused the incident, right? Because we want to understand the gap and fix it so it doesn't happen again. But in terms of hacking back, I would say that's a big no.
Okay. All right. So we looked at the threat landscape. We looked at the reality for business. We've just looked at nation state and strategic risk. Let's talk now about what CEOs and CIOs should do. So Brian, let's talk to the CEO of a 100-person firm. What are the 3 actions, in your opinion, they should take?
I have more than 3 actions. I would say the first thing you should do is get a risk assessment on that prioritizes your vulnerabilities, the gap, and all that kind of stuff. I think definitely, if you don't have MFA, make sure you deploy that. If you don't have an MDR type of managed detection and response type of product, make sure you have those type of things. Make sure everything's patched. You'll be surprised. We do a lot of risk. We go in there, a lot of stuff is not patched, or they don't have these type of things, which are again vulnerable things. And those are the actors that Miriam was talking about, and her exploitation that she was talking about. We find those type of that are out there. So I would say get a risk assessment and follow what they tell you to do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to jump in here and strongly agree with what Brian just said. If you don't have an assessment of where you are or what your vulnerabilities are, you could be spending money in all the wrong places. When you get an assessment, you can look at it and then prioritize what needs to be done. One, depending on how big or small you are, one from a most bang for the buck, I'll say, where, hey, we can do this and that will protect us against that. And if you don't have the assessment, and it may be dangerous to do your own assessment because you're looking at it from your own perspective. So I would strongly agree with what Brian just said.
So Dean, let's stay on that point. How do I know when it's good enough? What does a mature business cybersecurity program look like?
Are you? I mean, I can answer. Did you ask?
I'm asking you, Dean. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I went to sleep for a couple of minutes. I was tired. So there are maturity models that are available, and there are standards to which you can adhere. So NIST has a standard. The 20 critical security controls is another one. ISO 27001 and 2. And if you're a medical facility, there's HIPAA. There's all kinds of different templates, security templates that you can use. And so, when you start to look at that and you figure out how many of these am I actually compliant with, it will indicate for you what your maturity level is. So it's hard to just say you got to do these.
But there are standards out there that we can use as our benchmarks.
Absolutely. Yep.
Great.
Yeah. And this, what Dean was saying, this is a great standard, which we help companies with. So yeah, I agree with him. I just want to add your resilience, making sure your backups and you're testing your backups and actually testing recovery time, making sure backups they call it air gapped, offline and all that. That is so important alongside the other stuff that I mentioned.
So, Brian, let's stay on that point. So let's talk about belt and suspenders here. How important is board level reporting and visibility? Right? Maybe once upon a time it was the cyber guy in the corner, but should the board of directors be involved and be asking for reports on cyber posture?
Listen, I've commingled with many CEOs in my days, and I belong to Vistage, a large organization of CEOs, for quite a long time. It's amazing how a lot of my colleagues just look at IT as, or looked at IT. Hopefully, with time, hopefully it's changing. Again, not really taking it seriously, especially now with the cyber. We mentioned AI. A lot of people don't know. We think AI just you go into ChatGPT and prompt. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. It's going to give me something. But there's a lot of form of AI. If you want to look up, there's agentic AI, which is kind of a it's a robot, kind of does whatever it wants. You can give it parameters, and so it's a little bit of a wild west. So if I'm CEOs need to take it seriously, because this is definitely a financial risk to their company, operational risk, talking to reputation. But I've seen companies go completely out of business. I can name you 3 companies, and I'm going to name one. Okay, EYP. You can look it up. And I tried to really help, and they went out of business because they weren't really taking it seriously. The CEO wasn't taking it seriously. Sad. And 800 people became unemployed because of that incident. So CEOs need to look at this much more importantly, and that's why we, as Advanced 2000, created this risk scorecard, kind of an scorecard for the CEO, for the board, allowing them to see their actual readiness. Me as a CEO, I'd be looking at this daily to see where my scorecard is. It's a 5-minute check. I want daily, weekly, maybe, but it's a 5-minute check. Then you'll know. So that transparency, oversight over this is important.
Thanks,
yeah,
Brian.
I would add to that in the earlier days, information technology was looked at as a necessary evil. In other words, we're only doing this because other companies are doing this, and we don't want them to get ahead of us. Okay, and then it became a way of improving efficiencies and other things, which would add to the bottom line. And I'd like to point out that the Y2K problem, if everybody remembers that, that's where we went to the 00 year, which had never occurred before. And so the years were going from 91, 98, 99. And when you got to 00, that was actually back to the year 1900. Well, the leadership of these companies got so scared that they became involved in the project. And Y2K was a very successful project because the leadership was involved, and because the board level people were involved. Everybody was involved because they were afraid that if they didn't get involved, their whole company could go away. As Brian has pointed out, it can happen. So yeah, they need to be involved, but I still think they they're not interested. It's too much detail for them. They can't, you can't hold their attention.
Okay.
Just
You know,
to
Dean,
add to that,
I always say, go ahead, Miriam. I'm going to say something after Miriam. Go ahead.
yes, just to add to that, we've actually seen this when we're like reporting to like the C-suite of our partners and our MSPs and our SMBs. What they understand most is financial gains or financial loss. So we try to translate everything into what could be the potential financial loss because it's not an IT risk at the end of the day. They need to look at it as an enterprise or a business risk.
That's right.
I agree.
Miriam, let's stay with you for so. Okay,
So
sorry,
hold
Brian,
on,
go ahead.
So I want to since Miriam showed a slide, now I want to show a slide. Okay, it's my turn to show a slide since we got into this. Can I show a slide? Okay,
Absolutely.
Hold on, I'm gonna show a quick slide on my computer. So, can everybody see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm showing this. This is a slide that I was showing our sales staff and all that in our sales kickoff, and it's very important. For me, listen, I'm a CEO. I understand you got to meet your bottom line as a CEO. You got to look at this as investors, everybody, and maybe if a private equity group, they're always looking at that, but you got to look at the picture long term. This is how truly the business is today. Okay, your business is riding. Think of this as IT on these pillars, like a three-legged stool. I always show this. And that's budgets, the money spent on IT. That's the skill set of the people managing your IT and the infrastructure you're buying to protect your IT. You could be spending all the money and not buying the right infrastructure or the right skill set. Like your bare stack somewhere in here, maybe some little bit in here as well. A lot of people, a lot of companies don't see this way. A lot of CEOs don't realize that their business sits on a three-legged stool, and that's a three-legged stool. I just want to share that. It's kind of
important perspective. Thank you, Brian.
There's a picture that I created that I've always shared with people. So there you go.
Thanks, Brian.
Sorry.
Miriam, let's close out this section on what CEOs and CIOs should do. If I'm a CEO or a CIO, a breach happens tomorrow in my organization. What's the first 24 hours supposed to look like? How should I be ready for this? And what should I be doing in that first 24 hours after being hit?
Yeah, so given that you do have the proper plans and processes in place, you're most likely going into damage control. And what you want to do is try to isolate the threat so the damage does not spread. Try to contain the threat. You want to isolate the affected systems, network quarantine as soon as you can so the threat actors can't move laterally. You want to engage in your IR process, as I mentioned before, and also with your legal counsel as well. There's a lot of legal implications when it comes to a breach. So you want to get them involved as soon as possible. You want to get the authorities involved as well. And you also want to preserve evidence. You want to make sure that logs don't get deleted. You want to make sure your backup is healthy and up and running and just pray that it wasn't also affected. You want to assess impact, try to understand what the root cause or the initial access was, and also communicate with your employees internally as well. You want to be as transparent as possible. I think that a lot of the times companies try to hide it for a long time and actually does more damage than good. So the first 24 hours, I would say, just to sum it up, is contain and isolate and try to preserve all the evidence as you can. So you can engage an IR team or you can engage a forensics team as well.
Thanks, Miriam. And Miriam, just to be clear, can you tell a little bit about what kind of a role Barracuda might play in that process for my company?
Yeah, so we do incident guidance for our partners and our customers. So if you do get breached, we will get on a call with you. We'll try to assess the damage. We'll try to get you the root cause and contain the incident. But I do want to emphasize that all of our customers that have all of our protection in place, so network, server, firewall, endpoint, cloud, they have not been breached with any sort of ransomware attack. It's usually the organizations where there's a gap in their environment. So maybe they're not monitoring their servers or they're not monitoring their firewalls. Those are the organizations that get hit because monitoring and detecting is the fastest way for prevention.
Got it. Thank you, Miriam. All right.
So, yeah, I'd just like to add, the number one thing to do, the very first thing you do is remain calm. Okay. And then I've actually broken it down into time segments. So like the first 4 hours, as Miriam says, do you want to understand the scope of what the breach is and contain it? And then, in the 4 to 8 hour time frame, you need to assemble the response team. Who's going to do what, and how are we going to address this? And then after you've got that in place, you've got to for the next 4 hours, so 8 to 12 in hours 8 to 12, you want to collect evidence and you want to get the forensics. And then after you've got that, it's, communicate and regulatory plans. And then the last thing is your long-term containment and recovery. So I break it down into 4 hour segments, 6 4 hour segments. But the most important thing is to remain calm, get organized, and then walk through it.
Makes sense. Voice of experience. Thank you, Dean.
Yeah.
All right. I want to run us through a set of short questions and answers. And I'm going to kind of call you guys out. Brian, we talked about AI and cybersecurity, cyber attacks, cyber defense. Who's winning? Offense side or the defense side, in your opinion, when it comes to AI? Where is AI helping more?
Listen, AI is going to be a multiplier for the, we mentioned nation states and we mentioned hackers sitting in basement and whatever. And I want to make people, just very quickly, I want people to let people know that some of these hackers sitting in basements, they can be subsidized by some of these nation states. But I'd say both. And AI is a multiplier. It's going to help them be able to hack faster and more persistently. In addition, we can leverage it to even protect us more. So I'd say both.
Okay. Miriam, is MFA enough?
No. So I think MFA is critical, but there's definitely ways threat actors can bypass it. So you need to make sure that you have other defenses in place. You need to make sure you have 24/7 monitoring. You need to make sure the patch policy, you have your endpoints protected. So it is a defense mechanism, but it's not everything.
Dean, are backups enough? Can I say, well, if I get hacked, I'll just bring up a backup?
Well, that depends on how you define a backup. So once you've done the backup, have you done a restore? And I don't mean just, testing the backup on some server somewhere. There's a company out of Los Angeles that would take and tell a division, you've just been hacked and you're down. And they would have to take their backups. At that time, it was tapes and discs. And they would fly to the other side of a country where another division would provide them the space and the necessary tools to bring up their backups. And they would have to operate for 2 days out of that other division. So just doing a backup and testing it doesn't make me feel confident. At least do a restore. And if you're doing that, well, you're ahead of the game.
Fair enough. Brian, is cloud safer than on-prem, or is on-prem safer than cloud?
It all depends. If it's our cloud, yes. But if it's a public cloud, and I say that because security comes built into our cloud. If it's cloud that's like a public cloud, like in some of the big clouds, AWS, Azure, no, you still got to do the work. You still got to have MFA. You still got to have your patching, and you still got to do the same thing. And that is also a misconception that people have, that cloud, I just move my stuff to the cloud, I'm going to be safe. No, you still got to do the work. The cloud is kind of just like having your computers. You still got to do the work to patch them and make sure you have a good compliance policy. I want to add just to Dean, just 1 second. Regarding the backup, there are also tools now that even check your backup if they are locked up. And those are some of the tools we do on our offline stuff. So backup alone is definitely not. You got to have a backup to the backup and a whole bunch of analytics to that.
Got it. Miriam, what would you say is the biggest myth in cybersecurity?
So I have two. So the first one is sometimes I hear customers talking about if I'm going to get attacked or if I'm going to get breached. It's really not the matter of if, it's the matter of when. So you really have to be prepared for when it'll happen because it will happen. And the other thing is in terms of cybersecurity, people think it's an IT or a technology issue. I did mention this before, but it is fundamentally a cyber risk and a leadership issue.
Got it. Dean, this is an obvious question, but at what point does cybersecurity become a fiduciary responsibility issue?
As soon as you're using the technology. I mean, it's a fiduciary responsibility right from day one. I mean, as long as nothing goes wrong, well, fine, okay. But as soon as something goes wrong, we're talking computers here. You can make errors at blinding speed, and your finances and everything else can go to hell quickly. So yes, it's a fiduciary responsibility right from the get-go.
Got it. Brian, will regulators begin holding executives personally accountable for cyber losses?
That's a tough one. I don't know if I can speak to that, but I do want to say that, like, if you look at, there's almost switch to insurance. I think insurance companies, if people aren't following their recommendation, they should not pay for a claim. That's just so. That's a tough one. I don't know how to answer that one, Joe. You got
All right.
me.
Well, let's wrap this up with one final question, and we'll just give everyone a chance to answer. And we'll start with Miriam. If you could give one message to every CEO listening today about cyber risk, what would it be? We'll go Miriam, Dean, and then close with Brian.
I think the first thing that they should do and understand about cyber risk is focus on your cyber hygiene. Make sure you have the basics in place, right? So employee education, making sure you're educating your employees because social engineering attacks are still at the forefront of all the cyber attacks that we see, making sure you have a full control on your assets and your environment. A lot of the times we'll see that you don't even know how many devices are in your environment. There may be 10 devices that are going unmonitored. And what we've seen is that 100% of incidents that happened involved some sort of unmonitored or rogue device. So focusing on your cyber resilience, focusing on your cyber hygiene, I think that is what is going to differentiate your company compared to your competitors.
Thank you, Miriam. Dean, if you can give one message to every CEO listening today about cyber risk, what would it be?
It would be very short, and it would be this. Cyber risk is not an IT problem. It's a business continuity, financial, and leadership risk. That's it.
Thank you, Dean. Brian, again, if you could give one message to every CEO listening today about cyber risk, what would it be?
I want to say what Dean, it's not an IT problem, but I do say invest in a cyber assessment. Assume you will be hacked. Give it the importance that it needs because your business depends on it. You can go out of business. You can call me. I'll give you a dozen businesses that went out of business because of this that I know. Test your resilience on your backup. Make sure you have an offline backup, and before you're forced to. I think that'll be my message.
All right, thank you, Brian. Katie's back on here. She's going to give me the hook. So let me just thank you guys for joining us today. Miriam, Dean, Brian, thank you. Great conversation. Cyber defense is a team sport, guys. No one does it all. I want to really encourage everyone to visit the websites of the organizations that are behind these three fine people. Please visit Barracuda. They're a great partner of ours and a great organization to make part of your security defense posture. Dean's organization, Institute for World Politics, get trained in cyber. Take a look at Dean's program, recommend it to your folks. And then Brian with Advanced 2000, a really super hardened, cyber secure environment for your cloud computing and communication needs, please take a look at them. So Katie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you, Brian, Miriam, and Dean for being with us today. Very much appreciate everybody's time and attention, and we'll be sending the recording out post-event. And please reach out if there are any questions or you'd like to continue the conversation. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
There's a Q&A in here. I saw this Q&A. There's a Michael Moore. The panel spoke about supply chain and smaller business impacting larger security. Recently, we've seen the theory of hack one, hack many, compromise. Let me see here. So basically, does AI play a significant role in the next stage of evolution in cyber weapons? 100%, Michael, 100%. All you got to do is look at agentic AI. We can see some of that. So somebody asked a question here. I just want to answer.
All right, so I want to remind everybody also that next month, actually March 25th, we are going to have our good partners at Barracuda with us for a live demonstration of a cyber defense activity. We're calling it War Games, and we encourage everyone to look out for that invitation. But March 25th, one of Miriam's colleagues will be with us, and we'll be showing some live action events of cyber defense featuring Barracuda's products and services. So we hope you can join us next month as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Thank you.